brand new edition of ET Now on the go, and I'm here in the city of Bangalore. And right behind me, as you can see, is this iconic building that is Biocon Research Center, and I will be joined by Mr. Shreehas Tambe, who is the MD and CEO of Biocon Biologics. We'll talk to him about the business of Biocon Biologics, what sets them apart, their growth roadmap going ahead, and the most important, when is the company going to be looking in for an IPO? So a lot of questions lined up for you, Mr. Tambe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you.
And first and foremost, Biocon Biologics is a leading biosimilars company, not only in India, but across the world, right? And I'm sure that this entire landscape has gone through a lot of changes. If you would highlight some of those for us, and also what's actually worked well for your company.
So let me give you a sense of where we were before November 2022. We were present in 2 countries and in just a science and ops organization. But now, post November 22, we've been present in 120 countries, and our business has become a fully integrated model. Now, how has the landscape changed? It's changed significantly, because if you look at what the entire therapy was, say 5 years ago, to what it has become now, is significantly moved from small molecules to biologics.
Right.
If you see the drugs that were sold just in 2023, 8 of the top 10 drugs were biologics. So that has really changed the opportunity overall in terms of saying what are the products that would be sold earlier to what are the products that are going to be sold in the future. From our perspective, the therapy areas that we've always focused on are either in the diabetes space, oncology, or in immunology. And what we are seeing that the last 5 years to the next 5 years, the overall non-communicable diseases are set to grow tremendously. Public healthcare spends 5 years ago was less than $1 trillion. In the next 5 years, it's expected to exceed $1.6 trillion.
Wow.
And all of that is moving in the direction of non-communicable diseases, particularly in diabetes, oncology, and immunology. So when you ask me about the landscape, I think the landscape's tilted towards non-communicable diseases, and the treatment paradigms moved from small molecules towards biologics, with the opportunity significantly opening up in the next 10 years, where we're seeing about 45 to 50 of those blockbuster drugs, as we call them, which is sales of over $1 billion, losing exclusivity. And once they lose exclusivity, that opportunity at peak sales, which was $270 billion in the next 10 years, is all going to move towards biosimilars, which is why we are very excited about this space.
So Shreehas, your company has recently hit a very significant milestone, right? $1 billion in revenue, that's the milestone that you'll have hit. What does this mean, this sort of a landmark for the company, and how does this place you for your future growth?
Well, Cheryl, to be honest, getting into the $1 billion club is always something that you aspire to do. And I think post the acquisition that we did on the Viatris business, it was really important for us to get past that $1 billion number.
Right.
And we did that last year. We went from being a 2-country present science and ops company to be a fully integrated company present in 120 countries. So that $1 billion is, well, important psychologically, but most importantly, it put us in a very unique club where we became one of the top 5 biosimilars companies in the world.
Brilliant.
So that is really what it means to us, and I think it's positioned us very well to become a leading global biosimilars player.
Absolutely. And like you also mentioned just now, you have operations in over 120 nations, right? And it's a huge global footprint that you have. So tell us, how are these advanced economies actually helping you, your company, and the growth that you are having there as well?
Yeah, and just to go back in time, just to give you a sense of what we were, for a very large part of our existence, we were a science and operations company, which means we did where all the magic happened, where we made the drugs, we developed it, we manufactured it, but we really partnered with very strong commercial front-end players who are actually able to take these products to patients. What's changed post the acquisition, really, when I talk about the 120 countries, is we actually have now a commercial engine which is able to serve patients directly.
Right.
And that is really what is a big transformation for us, because we believe that for us to be able to serve 1 billion patients, which Kiran talks about, I think it's very important for us to have had that integrated model.
Right.
And that is really what has helped us become this leading player that we are today.
All right. So you have presence in the advanced economies. Tell me how emerging markets, what role is emerging markets playing for the company as well?
So emerging markets is where we started our business from. So it's very special for us. India is where we began.
Yeah.
And India is very, very close to our heart. Everything that we've done is to serve the billion odd people that we have here. But we've expanded to see how can we serve people across the world.
Right.
Emerging markets was, I would say, roughly about 50% of our business before the acquisition. Today, advanced economies have 70% of our business. So it's a 70-30 business, but then the pie is also grown substantially.
Yes.
So emerging market continues to grow at a 20% CAGR, which is a very strong growth rate. And we are partnered with over 70 different players across countries. So we believe in partnering, in shared success and collaboration. Advanced economies is a whole different game, and we are very, very well positioned in the US and in Europe to take advantage of that.
Right, so you said 70% now actually comes from advanced economies, given the fact the dynamics also have changed. The pie is much bigger. And you did speak about that you all are collaborating with global players as well. One significant approvals that, a set of approvals that your company has got for biosimilars of late, one is for Yesin-Tech and the other one is for Yesafili. So if you could explain to us, what does this actually mean for the company? Because it is, I know that, and I've read about it, it's pretty significant, but how significant is it?
Yeah, and I think that's a very important point you touch upon, Cheryl, because we talked earlier about the fact that which are the therapy areas that we've focused on. Historically, we've been very focused on debilitating diseases.
Right.
We're focused on diseases that don't just impact the individual, but then are very devastating because they can destroy the whole family.
Yes.
Because it is, whether it's diabetes, which is called a silent killer, or it's oncology, which is cancer, where most people can't afford treatment, or immunology, which can really affect you emotionally as well.
Yes, absolutely. So given the fact we did speak about the research and development, it is very critical, right? And also what is critical, the money that you put in for this research and development. So how does that all work? Do you have to invest more? Are you investing more every year and each year to maintain your leadership position when it comes to this R&D?
I think one of the things that you need to have is a scientist at the helm, like Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw.
Yes, absolutely.
She calls herself an accidental entrepreneur, which is not true. But the fact is that she's a scientist at heart.
Right.
And what's driven Biocon and what's different about our DNA is really Kiran. It's because of the ethos that she's brought into the company. What's differentiated us over the years is the product portfolio, our commitment to be driven by science. So we got into the biosimilar space even before guidelines were published. And that was because of her firm commitment that if we follow the science, we're going to eventually get there. So that is what is driven. So today when we've invested, and I use two currencies, let me use US dollars, we've invested over $1 billion in R&D in our portfolio, which is over or almost close to 10,000 crores. Over the years, and we continue to spend somewhere, or I would say invest, spend is not the right word, about 800 to 900 crores every year. And that is because we believe that a key differentiator is going to be our R&D pipeline. And that's why we call it our lifeline.
It's your lifeline, yeah. We did speak about the two biosimilars that you just recently got approval. So when are you going to launch these globally? I wanted to come back to it, but then I got so excited talking about R&D, but yeah, so when are you planning to launch them?
Well, these are exceptional products, and when you bring the products to the market, you also have to navigate the IP landscape.
Right.
Now, our IP teams also worked very hard. In fact, you would have seen recently that for the 8th time in a row, we were awarded one of the Elite IP Teams Award in Asia.
Right.
So we are bringing the Yesin-Tech product to the US in the first quarter of next year, which is very, very exciting for us. It's a global launch because this month we got an approval from the European authorities,
Yes.
and we'll be looking to launch that product in Europe also shortly. So this product will get global launch in the next few months. So it's not too far out. We will be in the first wave of products in the US.
Oh, right. So very soon is what it looks like. But when you got the US FDA approval, right, for Yesentech to be manufactured in Bangalore facility, so how are the things progressing on that particular front? Issues with the US FDA sorted now, we could say that?
You'll be happy to know that in October we got an approval for our insulins, and now most recently we've got approval on this site for all our products, including Yesentech that you talked about, which will now move forward. So FDA is an ongoing process. We work very closely with all regulators, not just the US, but also with the European authorities, Health Canada. We also work closely with TJ in Australia, Cofepris, also with Anvisa in Brazil. So I think we are a global company which works very closely with regulators around the world, because we make one product, one quality, because we don't think that you can differentially value life.
Right.
That's why we make one quality for the world.
Right, absolutely. And that's very essential. And you did speak about how you all have reached the $1 billion milestone. And also your company also is among the top companies when you talk about biosimilars globally, right? So now you have an aspiration to be among the top 3 biosimilar companies in the world.
Yeah.
So what will drive that growth? What will be the key drivers to achieve that sort of a goal?
Well, I think I would be probably aiming low if I said amongst top 3, if I don't say top, because because the way we have slated a company which has 5 new products launching in the US in the next 15 to 18 months, and 3 new products across the world, I think should really be aiming high. And I think we are very excited about the opportunity ahead of us, and we believe that that puts us in a very unique position. Not just that the products that we've got have over a fourth or a fifth of the market that it operates in, but it also has huge new products that are coming in that will drive growth ahead. So not only are we excited about what we have, but we are very excited about what's to come. And that's why I wouldn't say that.
So I'll change my question, I'll revise it. Your
We should be the leading player.
You're going to be the leading player in the world.
I think the aspiration should be to be the leading player.
Yeah, to be the leading player. So I wanted to understand, so what sort of a roadmap or sort of a target that you have for growth for Biocon Biologics?
Well, as I said, we've been growing at a very, very healthy clip. If you see between 23 and 24, partly driven by the acquisition, we grew at a very, very healthy clip,
right,
maybe 50 or plus %. What is more important, Cheryl, to note is at no point has growth been just revenue sales or increase in sales. It's actually been profitable growth. One of the things that we've constantly insisted on is we call it growth only when you have a profitable increase in revenues.
Right.
If you otherwise don't grow the business, then it's not what we are interested in. So we are steadily growing that business. We haven't given a guidance on what it's going to look like, but we believe that where we are at this base, to be in that top 5 is a good start. We expect to move from top 5 to top 3, which we don't see as a big challenge, and then aspire to be the leading player.
Right. So you've done an acquisition, the company has been integrated. I want to know any more acquisition plans that you all are scouting for?
Well, typically they say you should never say no to anything. But at this point, we've made such a large acquisition. We've, just to give you a sense of the scale and the size of the acquisition, I'll use again Indian rupees just for giving a context. The acquisition that we completed was 27,000 crores. So which is a very, very large acquisition, and the largest outbound acquisition from India for a pharmaceutical company. And for a company to go from being not present at all to being present in so many countries with such a large acquisition is a very big deal. And to complete that entire integration in less than 12 months or in 12 months is a massive achievement that the team has done. At this point, we are more focused on consolidating it. We devised a 3-stage strategy. Preserve, which was to make sure we preserved value in the acquisition. 2 is consolidate which is the phase we are in now. And 3 is accelerate, which is why I say that we should aspire to become a bigger player.
Bigger player.
So unless we've gotten that right, I think we would not be doing justice to what we've acquired.
So I want to ask you a lot of questions about Biocon. When you talk about Biocon, one thing it resonates very clearly with is I've always known Biocon as a top drug maker when you talk about insulin, right? But there's an interesting story about it, right? Because while we were talking some time ago, you did mention about that insulin wasn't the primary objective, or manufacturing insulin wasn't the primary objective of Biocon. How did that actually come into being and becoming a top player now when you talk about insulin?
Yeah. That's interesting that you asked that, Cheryl, because insulin is a very special drug today for the company because of the way it's begun. When it began, we were an enzymes company. We weren't an insulins company when we started our life, and Kiran ran that business for a very, very long time. We got from enzymes into small molecules. And we were doing a very big small molecules business. We still continue to have a very large small molecules business, which is housed under the Biocon Limited business. But as Kiran was looking at it, one day she realized that most of our Indian population today were consuming animal origin insulin. And she got to know about it and this was somewhere in the early 2000s, okay? So at the break of the millennium, when she realized that not only was insulin expensive and unaffordable to most people, but the insulin that they were actually availing was animal origin insulin. And this was really appalling, and she said, this is unethical, we have to do something about it.
I'm glad.
So she came back into the meeting and she said, listen, we've got to do something about it. We've got so much science, so much technology. Let's use that, leverage it to make insulin. And that got us started in 2000 in trying to make insulin, leveraging a proprietary platform which we had developed for enzymes. So today when we talk about our insulin, so 2004 when we launched our recombinant human insulin, which is branded Insugen, it was a unique proprietary platform made from our enzyme roots, and which is why we are a largest company today with its own proprietary platform. So we got into insulins because of a humanitarian cause. And it's the story of everything that we've done, Cheryl. Whatever's come to us and whatever we've done, yes, we are for profit, but what's underpinning all of what we've done is a very strong humanitarian background to what we do. And that whether it's in the diabetes space with insulin that you talked about, or in the cancer space, or in the immunologies.
All right. So let's talk something about your financials. You recently refinanced your debt. This is through listing of bonds in Singapore Exchange. How does this actually help in deleveraging the business?
I think this is a very important question from a financial standpoint, and I think I want to go back a little bit to the acquisition that we've been talking about. When we made the acquisition, I want to take you back to how Kiran's built the company.
Right.
For 45 years of our existence, we've always been a cash positive company for all along, even today. And we've never leveraged our balance sheet. So we've never had debt on our books.
Wow.
It was only when we came up with this transformational opportunity that will transform what Biocon Biologics is as a company, which is what I said, went from 2-country operation to 120-country operation, a science and ops company to a fully integrated company, and becoming one in top 5. So it was really a transformational opportunity. That is when we decided that we're going to take debt on our books for the first time. So when we did the acquisition, it was a $3.3 billion, let's say $3 billion acquisition. $800 million came from our own equity. 1.2 billion was debt. Okay. Now what we've done at this point in time was that $1.2 billion debt is what we have refinanced.
Okay.
And that refinanced through a bond, so that we don't have to worry about any short-term repayment of that money. We've really packaged it in such a manner such that we don't have to worry about it for the next 5 years. And then in that 5 years, the business then gets time to grow, and we can focus on that. What is very interesting is when we've met over, I would say 80 plus investors in the span of 3 weeks that we had the road shows. And there's so much excitement about the story and what we're trying to build at Biocon Biologics, that $800 million bond that we did, which was 800 plus the syndicated bank loan, the $800 US $800 million bank the bonds were oversubscribed by 3 times. So we could not allot all of what was in demand. So that tells you the strength of the Biocon Biologics story and the interest that the investor community has in what we are trying to build. And that is because the opportunity ahead of us is large. The next 10 years will see almost 50 odd billion dollar assets losing exclusivity. So the cumulative sales of those assets are over $270 billion. So that tells you that the opportunity ahead of us is far greater than what we have seen so far, and which is why you see greater investor interest, and which is why the intent that the bond was oversubscribed.
Right. So those are the investors who've heard your story. We have viewers who want to hear your story. Would be very interested to know, how did Biocon Biologics actually come into being? And then I'll ask you the most asked question right after you tell me that story.
But I'm looking forward to your most asked question also. I'm assuming all of the others were too. Yeah. But let me answer that question. See, again, I again go back to the Biocon story, because Biocon Biologics and the Biocon story is very closely intertwined. And if you see the ethos of how Biocon has been set up by Kiran, she's looked at incubating various businesses. Biocon Limited is actually the company which incubated the small molecules business, which was listed in 2004. It also incubated the services business, the research services business, which was listed 10 years after that, was 2014 or 2015, which was called Syngene, which is another. Yeah. So the Biocon Limited IPO was a $1 billion IPO on listing. Syngene was a $1 billion IPO on listing. It also incubated another business which was in novel drugs, which was in the US, listed on NASDAQ, which was Bicara. That was another $1 billion on listing. So we've got at Biocon a history of incubating businesses. One of the other businesses that we've incubated at Biocon is Biocon Biologics. That is where you have the insulins, the monoclonal antibodies, the recombinant proteins. And that's the business that we are talking about, which is where everyone is so excited about. Right. That is how it came into being, because we've always believed that each of these growth drivers will make Biocon Limited stronger, and which is what it has done. Biocon Limited incubated all these businesses, and today you see each of them have become independent companies, strong on their own, and delivering results, unlocking value for investors as it's gone along.
Right, so unlocking value for investors. Like I said, I'll come to the most asked question then. Any timeline, any roadmap about IPO for Biocon Biologics? Yeah. Because, and also you gave me a number also of how the other businesses that were incubated at Biocon, $1 billion IPO for most of them. Have you all done any study on that also for your company?
Yeah, well, I can tell you this is the most asked question, like you said, but not in the way you asked it, in terms of what is the valuation expected. I think the important thing is, like I told you before, when you go to an IPO, you want to be very clear in terms of what you want to do once you list as a company. Right. What is your strategy once you have listed, gone to the market? How do you provide investors with a growth path to say that now I've gotten this infusion of funds into the company, what's the growth story going forward? But before you went on to a growth path, as I said, the 3-pronged strategy was preserve, consolidate, accelerate. Until you preserved value, which we did, and now you consolidate, which we are doing, you couldn't have gone to the accelerate phase and said that. I think some of the big unlocks that you've seen so far is the fund raise that we did through the bond. And I think that's really good because we no longer have to worry about debt repayment for the next 5 years.
Right.
So the bank loans taken care of. It was very important for us to unlock markets in the US, which we have done with the approval of our sites and the new product launches. So that's the second big unlock. And now we're looking really to see what the growth story should be, which is what we can take to investors who can then place their trust and their funds with us so that we bring it to the market. In terms of the valuation that you asked for, at the last fundraise, we've been several times higher than the previous ones already.
Okay.
So we would look at a larger valuation in terms of what it should be. I wouldn't hazard a guess of what that number would be, but we are very excited about what we have built at Biocon Biologics, and I'm sure our investors and your viewers will see the value in what we are building here.
Absolutely, I'm very sure about that, and everyone's actually waiting for the timeline, which you are not giving as yet, as always, but all the very best for your business. You've built a big business. Biocon is a name that I think globally everyone would link to India by default. So all the very best to Biocon Biologics and the roadmap going ahead, sir.
Thank you, Cheryl. It was wonderful talking to you. This was a great time. Thank you.
Thank you.